We're divorced, and I'll be getting the alimony. You have no say in this, Jack said as he left the hospital room. Wait, I yelled. But Jack didn't hear me. That's how I became single, still battling cancer. Surprisingly, I felt a bit relieved. My love for Jack had already cooled. Jack, who treated me poorly and was always selfish, deserved some kind of punishment. That's when I started planning my revenge. My name is Emma. I'm a housewife in my 50s. I live with my husband, Jack, and we don't have children. I thought we were supporting each other in our marriage, but a deep divide had formed between us. My ideal marriage involved supporting each other through good and bad times, but Jack didn't see it that way. Hey, where's the food? I'm in a hurry, Jack demanded one day when I came home from running errands. Even on his days off, he never helped with the housework. In our 30 years of marriage, Jack never once lent a hand. Even when I was sick, he believed housework was solely my job. When I was ill, Jack still expected me to do everything. He never cared for me. Instead, he would go out drinking with friends, leaving me alone. There was no love or support between us. Tried to bridge the gap in our early days, but Jack never admitted he was wrong. He always dismissed me, saying, "Don't complain, you're just a housewife." My love for Jack had long since faded. I didn't want to rely on him, but I hoped for his support during tough times. When I realized he lacked empathy, the distance between us grew. Eventually, I dreaded facing him. I knew our relationship was beyond repair. Then I fell seriously ill. My father took me to the hospital where I was diagnosed with cancer. Luckily, it was detected early, so there was hope for recovery. I messaged to Jack about my diagnosis and hospitalization, expecting some support. Even though our love had cooled, I still hoped Jack would show some concern. But Jack never visited or responded to my messages. It was clear he didn't care about me at all, despite my illness. This reality was unbearably painful. Was it so wrong to want my husband to care for me when I was struggling? Where did it all go wrong? I never intended to burden Jack. I just wanted him to care for me a little bit. But even that small hope was too much to ask. I decided to stop expecting anything from Jack and focus fiercely on battling my cancer. As expected, the fight was sheer agony. The medication was breaking my body down, and I spent countless nights unable to sleep due to the pain. Several times I considered stopping the treatment and just letting my body give in. Every time, my parents encouraged me, saying it would get better. Their words kept me going even when my will faltered. One day, while I was staring blankly at the ceiling from my bed, the door suddenly swung open. I wasn't expecting my parents, so I wondered who it could be. Here to see Jack. Had he finally come out of concern? Seeing how emaciated and drained I had become, wouldn't he feel some compassion? Numerous thoughts raced through my mind, rendering me speechless. Ignoring my reaction, Jack sat down next to my bed, quietly observed me, and then laughed. "So cancer does this to you, huh? You look terrible, hardly like a woman at all." His words sent a chilling shiver down my spine. Of all things, he shouldn't have said that to someone battling cancer. I wished he would just shut up. But Jack continued with even more hurtful words. "Ever since you've been gone, every day has been wonderful. Sugar, the house is a mess, but I hardly ever go home. Life without you is surprisingly easy." Jack's cruel words wounded me further. Why did I have to hear such things? Why wasn't there a single comforting word from him? I wanted to lash out at Jack, but my weakened body wouldn't cooperate, leaving me no choice but to quietly absorb his painful remarks. I stared at Jack with vacant eyes. Noticing my gaze, he chuckled mockingly and then said something utterly unbelievable. "By the way, I've already filed for divorce. I'm taking the house as part of the property division. You don't get a say in it." The room seemed to spin at his words. He filed for divorce without my consent. Why? Before I could gather my thoughts, Jack continued, I've fallen in love with someone else. She's 20 years younger than me, and I'm serious about her. You're in the way of us being together. Did this mean he had an affair? Such thoughts raced through my mind, but Jack, having said his piece, began to prepare to leave. Wait, I called out, but Jack paid no heed. There was no love left for me in his heart anymore. The pain in my chest became so intense that I just didn't care anymore. Fine, I said. With that one word, Jack left the room with a satisfied smile. After that, I fought even harder against my illness. Despite the pain, I was determined to recover fully from cancer and became even more dedicated to my treatment. 2 days passed. It might seem short, but for me, those days felt very long. I was tormented with uncertainty. Did Jack really finalize the divorce as he said, or were his words just meant to play on my anxieties? Perhaps there was no divorce at all. The one thing that kept me going was a secret plan to completely expose Jack. And then once he found out about it, even someone as cold-blooded as Jack would be shaken. I believed that a flustered Jack would surely try to contact me, and sure enough, Jack called me today. I couldn't take the call in my hospital room. I ignored the first hundreds of calls. Jack didn't seem to give up trying to reach me. Despite my phone being on silent mode, the constant vibrations were annoying. So I texted him, "Stop calling. It's annoying." Finally, the calls ceased, but then the messages started pouring in. "Please, I want to talk just once. I'll apologize for everything," and many more. If he couldn't reach me by call, he tried to text. Every single message was clearly out of self-preservation. Perhaps Jack had realized why I had so readily accepted the unilateral divorce. "Can I come see you?" he asked when I didn't respond. Given my current exhaustion from fighting my illness, the idea of meeting Jack was almost torturous. However, I figured if I declined, he'd incessantly call, so I replied, "Fine." My revenge plot was about to begin. Jack, who had treated me poorly for so long and even forced me to divorce, deserved a harsh punishment. Eagerly anticipating Jack's arrival, I was determined to bring him down. "Hey, what the hell are you thinking?" With that outburst, Jack entered my hospital room. His voice clearly revealed his panic, showing that he was already feeling cornered. To an outsider, Jack's reaction might seem over the top, but it was only natural for him to be this frantic. After all, I had a secret ace up my sleeve. I had no idea you had assets worth $6 million. If I knew about this money, I wouldn't have. Why didn't you tell me? Jack placed my bank book on the table. The book clearly showed that I had over $1 billion saved up. Well, you never asked. Who would imagine that a housewife like you would have this kind of money? If I had known about this money, I would have never divorced you. Maybe you shouldn't have impulsively forced me to divorce. Don't play games with me. And where did you even get this kind of money from? Jack, who unilaterally divorced me without my consent, was now complaining that he'd have acted differently if he'd known about my $6 million. It was so self-centered of Jack to assert he'd have changed his decision if he had known about the money. I decided it was time to let Jack in on the secret. Actually, the source of this $6 million was from investments I began as a mere pastime. The one who suggested I try investing was my parents. Although Jack's salary alone was enough for us to live comfortably, I always wanted to contribute something to our finances. My father was knowledgeable about investments, and when I expressed interest, he taught me hands on how to invest. Under my father's guidance, I began investing little by little, initially aiming to make even a small profit. I first started investing about 5 years ago. Since then, I've honed my skills considerably. Now, I've become so proficient that even my father exclaims, "I never thought you'd grow this much." The $6 million recorded in the passbook Jack brought was the profit I earned over those 5 years. I was going to tell you eventually, but then cancer hit me, and you suddenly started to claim divorce. What could have been done? I never intended to take the secret to the grave. Once I recovered from cancer and could return to a normal life, I had planned to confide in you about the $6 million. As a couple, I intended to share the money to ensure our life together. But before that could happen, you made the unilateral decision to divorce. It would be absurd to share the money with someone who's no longer my husband. Given the circumstances, all $6 million will probably be mine. Hearing my story, Jack's face turned red with rage. If I had known you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced. It's your fault for not revealing it immediately. Pay me alimony right now. $6 million to compensate for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband. Faced with such a vast sum, Jack seemed overwhelmed or simply unable to accept that he wouldn't be getting the money. Either way, he was making outrageous demands. Now that we're divorced, there's absolutely no way I'm giving the $6 million to Jack. And yet, Jack was so desperate to get his hands on the money that he was saying unthinkable things. I couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you laughing at?" Jack said. "Enough with the disrespect. I've always been irritated by your attitude. Did you ever think it's arrogant for a wife to have such wealth? A wife's assets are her husband's, so you should hand over these assets to me." "What do you mean a wife's assets belong to the husband?" I never intended to keep the existence of this money hidden forever. It's just that you went ahead and divorced me before I could reveal it. Stop making excuses. It's all your fault for keeping secrets. Every time I spoke, Jack turned bright red, accusing, blaming, and belittling me. Frankly, as someone recovering from illness, Jack's shouting was hard to bear. It resonated in my head unbearably. It was clear that trying to discuss anything further would be futile. No matter what I said, Jack would probably never listen and continue to paint me as the villain. Once I realized that it was impossible to reason with Jack, my next move was swift. "Please stop it. You were the one who went ahead and divorced, right? You forced me to divorce, remember? I always knew you were cruel, but I never imagined you'd go this far. When one reaches their limit, can they really become this enraged?" What I felt now was not the pain from cancer. It was something deeper. I tried to hold back my anger toward Jack, but it was unstoppable. Raising my voice might affect my body, but seeing him sitting shamelessly beside my bed and blaming me with every word made it impossible to stay calm. When I was diagnosed with cancer, what do you think went through my mind? I said, I thought maybe now Jack would worry about me a bit, that he might change his ways and start caring for me. Yet, what did you do? You didn't visit me in the hospital, and when you finally did, you filed for divorce and claimed our house. Now that you know about my wealth, you come and blame me like this. Are you kidding me? I'll say it again. I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was waiting for the right time to tell you. You destroyed that chance. I had never blamed Jack like this before. I always accepted his selfish actions, thinking that we were a married couple and should stay together without complaints or resentment. I'd always did my best for him because I loved him. But now, I felt no love for Jack. All I felt was uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards a man who only said selfish things. How did he become so selfish? What kind of upbringing makes a person so devoid of consideration for others? As I realized it was futile to question this, Jack pleaded, "Please, I'm begging you. She says she'll definitely divorce me unless I bring her $6 million. Knowing that you have that amount, if I can't get that money from you, I'll be left all alone. You still love me, don't you? Don't you want to help me?" It seemed that the woman Jack was cheating with had also found out about my $6 million. He must have told her. From what Jack said, It appeared that his mistress was just as greedy as he was. Birds of a feather flock together, I suppose. They seemed well suited for each other. Whatever suffering Jack might endure in the future no longer mattered to me, and I was able to completely detach myself from him. I'm really begging you. I'll do anything. Please give me the money. If not, I'm going to be in big trouble. Please help me out, Jack said, kneeling down and begging. I had never seen Jack this desperate before. His state seemed utterly ridiculous to me. At the same time, I felt a mix of disappointment and despair because he never showed such desperation for me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for Jack became. I realized that continuing the conversation was pointless. The more I interacted with this rotten man, the more certain I became that it would not lead to my happiness. I felt foolish for suffering and struggling for such a selfish man and for expecting him to show up during my illness. Despite my feelings, Jack continued to beg desperately. Listening to his words became the most painful thing for me. Please leave, I said. Don't say things like that, he pleaded, trying to butter me up. Even that was unbearable. I pressed the nurse call button and asked them to remove Jack. The nurse called security, and Jack was escorted out. He kept declaring, "You're the only one who can help," until the end, but I completely shut out his words. Even after that, Jack frequently visited the hospital. However, since the nurses were aware of the situation, he was never allowed to enter my room. According to my friends, since Jack couldn't secure the $6 million, the woman he had an affair with proposed a divorce, and now he's single. On the other hand, I continued to bravely fight against my cancer. Recently, I was declared completely healed and was discharged from the hospital. Thanks to overcoming my illness, my body now feels invigorated. The sensation of being healthy again is more precious than anything else. Currently, I'm using a portion of the $6 million I have saved up and leading a relaxed life. To be honest, I'm already 50 and have had enough of marriage. I think I'll probably live out the rest of my life alone. I feel there's nothing wrong with living my life unbound by anyone.